Your cell surface wears an invisible language written in sugar chains. This is not decoration. This complex molecular patterning dictates who a cell is, where it goes, and how it talks to everything around it. Think of your glycocalyx as a biological fingerprint that constantly rewrites itself based on its environment. It's the ultimate dynamic boundary negotiator. These precise patterns form cellular archetypes. They are informational codes far richer than simple DNA sequences alone can describe. We used to see these sugars just as molecular tags, but we are finding they function like an elaborate encryption key for existence itself. This is how life organizes its own deep information. Imagine your body isn't just made of cells. It's a living broadcast tower whose signal is written in sugars. These specific patterns, called glycosyltransferase signatures, are more than decoration. They are cellular barcodes defining who you are at the fundamental level. Think of them as highly complex architectural blueprints, not for a building, but for how a cell chooses to interact with its neighbors. Minute variations in these sugar chains influence everything from immune response and migration speed right down to local metabolic coherence. This isn't abstract theory. We're looking at tangible biological language that encodes identity beyond our DNA alone. Imagine your cells aren't just passive machines. They are living communication devices. That fuzzy sugar coat outside them, the glycocalyx, acts less like a border and more like an incredibly dense informational script. It's constantly rewriting itself based on everything happening inside and out, like a molecular Morse code translating cellular intent into physical dialogue. This isn't just about immune recognition. It means how tightly organized your internal system is dictates its ability to negotiate boundaries with the outside world, whether that boundary is another cell or an environmental stressor. The geometry of these sugars determines metabolic coherence at the deepest level, which means something nobody expected for understanding resilience in complex living systems. The code doesn't just read health, it writes intention. Imagine your cell surface isn't a static wall, but an incredibly complex language interface. These sugar structures, called glycan codes, are how cells talk about who they are and whether it is friend or foe. It's like biological typography. Minute shifts in arrangement change everything from immune tolerance to cellular identity itself. This informational pattern we call the imago cellulae. The whole glycocalyx negotiates boundaries dynamically. But some hardline biophysicists argue that these patterns are merely random noise, not code at all. Where do you draw the line between chemical accident and intent? We need to see how geometry dictates coherence before we can answer that question. Imagine your cell surface isn't just armor or a fence. Imagine it's an impossibly detailed library catalog etched in sugar chains. These glycan structures aren't random decorations. They are precise information tags. Think of them like cryptographic keys written in biology. Glycosyltransferases, the molecular architects, build these unique patterns that act as the cell's informational archetype. A specific pattern tells your body exactly who this entity is, friend or threat. The receptor might fire when it reads one code, but what happens next? How does that sugar language actually translate into conscious intent? You have to see how deep those signals run. We have long assumed that identity is written into our genetic code, a blueprint inside the nucleus. But what if we've been looking at the wrong language entirely? Think of your cell not as a sealed computer, but as an architectural interface, a boundary constantly negotiating its reality with everything around it. The crucial information might not be in the core instructions. It is written onto the sugar code itself. These complex patterns are not just random chemistry. They form what we can call cellular informational archetypes, tiny structural languages that define self versus non-self at a molecular level. If these sugars hold identity, then what else do they dictate about how coherence works in the larger system? We often think our bodies just react like complex machines responding to outside signals, like a thermostat flipping when temperature changes. But what if that's only half the story? What if the cell itself is speaking in an entirely different language right at its surface, something woven from sugars and proteins? These sugar patterns are not random decorations. They act as informational blueprints, a kind of cellular grammar telling other cells who it is, exactly where its borders lie, and what its underlying intent might be. It's like reading the metadata on a file to understand if that file was intentionally structured or just generated by accident. And this subtle biochemical dialogue suggests we are not merely biological mechanisms responding to chaos. We may be systems of profound pattern fidelity. It turns out that life is not just a story written by your DNA. It's also an infinitely complex performance staged across your cell surfaces. Think of these sugar patterns like biological fingerprints, each one detailing who you are and how you interact with everything else in the world. The subtle arrangement dictates whether signals arrive clearly or become corrupted noise within the system itself. We're talking about information density at a scale that fundamentally defines our subjective experience, not just immune response. If we look beyond symptoms to these foundational structural codes, we learn that coherence starts at the smallest edge of being. Start observing where your own patterns break down. That is where insight begins. The full research archive is at jmthomasofficial.com. It seems that life is not just about what we are made of, it's about how we present ourselves to reality. Think of your cell surface not as an impenetrable wall, but as a broadcast antenna constantly streaming informational code, a language written in sugars. This patterning dictates who you connect with and how coherently your internal system operates. The takeaway is this: focus on the geometry, not just the ingredients. When we optimize these subtle external codes, we are optimizing the potential for systemic self-coherence. We move from passive chemistry to active informational design. The full research archive is at jmthomasofficial.com.